Welcome to the EnsoReal Paradigm Shifters podcast. This show is for and about the entrepreneurs who work to improve and expand our human well-being by bringing cutting-edge technologies and ideas to life. We are Marie and Magnus Dahlgren, your hosts. In this episode, we talk with Jeff Faldalen. Jeff is the founder of New Concept Coaching. He is an acceleration specialist, and he is the host of the Jeff Faldalen Live Show, as well as the Potential Zone podcast. And now, here's our conversation with Jeff Faldalen.
Jeff, first of all, I would like to thank you that you're today with us on our podcast, EnsoReal Paradigm Shifters.
Thank you.
Yes, it's our honor to have you here with us today. And my first question, what is your strangest talent? How do you think?
What is my strangest talent?
All right.
Wow, that's a great question. I've never been asked that. I would say, okay, let me preface this by saying talent to me is an interesting word, okay?
Okay.
Because I believe that certain things we become better at just because they align with what we truly believe is aligned with our identity. Okay. So the reason I say that is because art, being creative and being an artist, I got a bachelor in fine arts. Okay. And the reason I say that is that being an artist has been one of my biggest challenges throughout my life. I had this love-hate relationship with it. For lots of reasons, and we can talk about that later if you'd like. But so for me, talent is an interesting word. But to answer your question, the strangest talent I have, I would say, is to question things.
To question things. Huh.
Yeah, probably would be to question things, how I question things. Because how we question things unlock new possibilities. Yeah, I would probably say how I question things.
Thank you.
My question about the talent is, do you see talent as the predisposition and skill as the honing of that predisposition? Or
I would say the skill is the honing aspect of that. But to me, so talent to me can have aspects of programming. So for example, appreciation is a priceless currency, is a priceless driver for people. And if they do a particular behavior, and they acknowledge significance with that, boom, a talent is born, right? So, and I'm not, that doesn't mean that's how all of it happens, but I just find the word talent very interesting. Great book to read about it is Mindset by Carol Dweck, where she compares mindset and talent. And without mindset, you are not going to take your talent into its fullest potential. You just won't. So yeah, it's just an interesting word. It's an interesting word. And I've never been asked that. So I was kind of caught off guard a little bit. I love it.
It's an icebreaker.
Questions.
Thank you for your answer. And you told about the full potential. And I have read again a little bit on Google and social media about you. And I know that you have your own book about full potential. Could you tell us a little bit more? What is this full potential and how do you help people to achieve this full potential?
Another great question. Now we're talking about what I love. I love potential. Potential is the actualization of possibility. Okay, so getting people, and there's a number of ways to talk about it, but probably the most effective way to describe it is spiral dynamics is some of what I use in order to help people understand what the different aspects of potential are, because a lot of people have been trained to think linear, right? So when I say different levels, they think hierarchically, right? They think, level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to holistically. Being is like if you drop a stone in the water, it has the ripple effect. but to boil it down, what determines someone's potential is their ability to adapt to challenges, their ability to move through new situations, new environments, new things that come into their lives. And how fast they accelerate through those determines their level of potentiality. And how I help people move through that, first of all, I educate them on what that really looks like on the different levels of spiral dynamics, and how each level, I'm fascinated by it because it's
Claire Grace. Yeah.
What takes people through the levels is they go through phases. So if we were going to use, there's colors, there's numbers, and there's names for each level. So I'll just, for simplicity's sake, use numbers, okay?
Yeah.
The odd numbers are the individual level. The even numbers are the group level, the sacrifice level. So when you're in the individual level, so say level 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, each one of those levels is an individualist. That's the expression level. When you go into the even numbers, you go into sacrifice for the group. Okay? So, and then you get into the group, and then the group wants to keep you at a certain place, and if you want to keep evolving, you have to leave that group to go out into your own. It's kind of like the hero's journey over and over and over and over. And what happens when you get to level 6, and it's really interesting, level 6 is what's really going on at a global conscious level right now. It's really stepping into its fullest part. Where are you located? Are you in the
We're in the United States, Maryland.
Okay, cool. So if you were here during an election, this was probably the most tension election there has ever been, right? I mean, without a doubt. And the reason is because of how more part of the collective conscious, level 6 is growing more and more and more. And with level 6, it's a very important part of evolution, because you go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it would be like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then when you go from 6 to 7, it's a massive, massive shift. Because at level 6, the transition from 6 to 7 is when a person recognizes that each level is important in particular situations. Where before that, each level thinks it's the best. Right, so level 3 thinks it's the best. Level 4 thinks it's the best, but then when you get to 7, you understand that each level has an important aspect for whatever situation. What determines? So to answer your question, how do you help somebody move through that? Is that you get in touch with what keeps them in their level that they're at. First of all, you show them what's possible. Once you introduce to your unconscious what's possible, it itself wants to make that happen. It wants to make it a reality, right? It's how we're wired as humans. We want to make harmony out of chaos. That's just the way we're wired. So when you introduce what is possible to it, it starts opening up an awareness that makes it long to be part of that, because our unconscious is a goal-seeking mechanism on steroids. I mean, it wants to serve, right?
Yeah.
And once you introduce something to it, it wants to make that a reality. That's why it's important to have goals. That's why it's important to visualize, to meditate, to do the things that we can to give it information, to give it direction, right? Otherwise, it runs the show, right? So once it understands what's possible, it starts going to work to make that happen. But probably the biggest thing that holds people back is, well, there's a number of things, but probably the biggest one is shame. And if you show somebody how to release shame, it literally catapults them, because shame has a lot of interesting components in it where, first of all, it really affects our level of deservedness. If I am inundated with shame, and I've been conditioned to believe that if I want something more, I should be ashamed of myself, that has a massive impact on somebody's wanting to evolve their life, because, well, who do you think you are? Right? I mean, it just little things like that. And again, that goes back to your original question with talent, right?
Yes.
If somebody, here, I'll just show you this. So this is a piece that I did back when I was in college. Okay. It's kind of hard to see because of the background, but this piece ended up getting published. I mean, it was a pretty significant piece for me, but I've shown this to people and they're like, what in the world is that? right? Now, as a child, if a child witnessed that and seen me handing this piece to somebody and the response that I got was like, what in the world is that? And that child says, I don't ever want to be rejected like that. Therefore, I'm going to shut down my creativity. I'm not creative. They made a decision in that moment based on child logic, right? And so having made decisions about that is going to greatly affect how they accelerate through their different levels. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. Yes, perfect sense.
So, you know, and I was having this conversation with somebody online the other day, that we have been, society has been so conditioned to think in duality. It's either this or it's that. And it's a very effective marketing tool because what it does is it divides the country, right? This is the United States of America, not the divided United States of America, right?
These are emotions too. That's a
right. And people don't understand unless, I mean, you make it obvious to them, but the left wing and the right wing is attached to the same bird, right? Just having that mindset is going to affect you being able to move through the levels of potential. So it's just looking at how they think.
That's very interesting. Thank you, first of all, for your response. And I have a couple of questions here.
Sure.
I would like to ask you, first of all, to explain a little bit more about these levels to our listeners. What each level means, how it is called, and what are the characteristics of the level. And the second question, I'm sorry that I'm giving two in a row, but they're interconnected. And the second one, I have heard that a lot of, so to speak, specialists and coaches and thinkers are saying that our society maximum on the fourth level. And you are talking now about the sixth level. Why it is so and how you can explain this?
So you're right. About 85% is level 4. Okay. It's changing. There's no doubt. So level 1 is, you know, and having this awareness, you're going to see that it falls into many different, I'll just call them maps. Okay. One of my mentors is Ken Wilber. I mean, I've studied a lot of Ken Wilber stuff, Claire Graves, spiral dynamics.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different people that talk about the levels. But level 1 is basically just existing. I mean, it would be like caveman, right?
Yeah.
Food, reproduction, excretion, just things like that. Pretty basic living things. They really haven't developed consciousness. And so they live in this cave, you know, and they're by themselves. And then one day they walk out of their cave and all of a sudden they recognize there's another caveman. Okay. Just understanding that now they have to learn how to coexist with something else, with somebody else. Right. So that makes their consciousness, their ability to adapt, expand more, right? Because now it's a tribe. Now it's not individual. Now it's a tribe, right? And with the tribe, nothing happens if the elder, the chief, the whoever's leading that tribe says it's okay, right? So that's kind of the mentality that level 2 has, right? But again, you go from 1, which is an individual, which expression, then you go into 2, and I've got a graph that shows level of change. Basically, your level of change will go like this, and then it drops down, and then it goes up to a higher level of where you were at before. If this is where you're at, you go down, you have this period of reconciliation, kind of coming to terms with it, and then you grow further, right?
Interesting.
That's basically what happens with each level. So level 2, now you're in that, you're learning how to get along with the tribe, and the tribe is, you reach this threshold of the level of consciousness within that tribe, right? This is the way we do things, and you want to keep evolving. At some point, you're going to have to leave that tribe, right? So you leave the tribe, and then you go out into level 3. Level 3, most of prisons are filled with level 3s. Okay, they're a power god. I am in control of my reality. They're very aggressive. They're very it's all about them, right? They don't really have the ability to think about other people. And then their life runs out of control, gets crazy, whatever. Well, then they evolve to level 4. So level 4 is when you go back into, there's a number of different names for it, but well, for simplicity's sake, we'll just keep it numbers. Level 4 is more about the system. Okay, it gives them guidelines. Again, it goes back into the group, right?
Yes.
So level 4 is the good book, right? The handbook, the Bible, the religious book, the Quran, whatever it is. It's give me guidelines to live my life by, right? It's sacrificing now for something later. Okay, so you be good here, you will get to heaven. If you do your job well for 30 years, you get a gold watch at the end of it, right? And that's where most of our society is. It's where most of our society is, right?
Right.
But then again, you want to keep evolving, right? You want to keep growing. So, and this is the big one, that this is one of the bigger shifts. Then you go into 5, which is the rational. Now, instead of living by faith, I want to prove that this stuff is real, right?
Yes.
So level 5, again, you go into the individualist again. You're going into the expression part again. Level 5 is where science was born. Level 5 is where the entrepreneur was born, right? Of I'm going to make this happen for myself, right? I'm going to prove that the earth is round, that the solar system exists, whatever it is, right? And so you stop living by everything by faith and start looking at, I want facts, I want evidence, I want, what does this really mean kind of stuff. And it's where capitalism was born. It's where, a lot of great things were born. But then it goes awry, right? It gets too much. Capitalism turns into greed, turns into pride, turns into a lot of things. And then, most high-level entrepreneurs understand that they have to, it's lonely. I mean, a lot of entrepreneurs know that they think different than most people. Scientists, I mean, it's a lonely road, right? There's not much about connection and things like that, because you're acting as a maverick, things like that. So then you recognize that, and you've created the financial, whatever it is that you want. You say, I don't want to wait for the gold watch, I want it now, right? This is all the stuff in level 5. But then you start recognizing your values start changing, and you want connection, you want meaning in your life, you want to live for a greater cause. Then you go into values level 6. Level 6 is where Greenpeace is happening, where the feminist movement happened, where global warming, all of these things started happening because of level 5, right? I mean, the industrial age, all the pollution and all the things that happen as a result of that. But then, and level 6, because it's the level just before 5 or 7, there's probably the biggest part of resistance that happens before they evolve to level 7. And understand, before you evolve, I like to explain it like a balloon, okay? Mm-hmm. The more you blow up a balloon, the tighter that rubber gets, right? Mm-hmm. And just before it pops, it's pushing back at the point just before it expands. It's pushing back harder than it has at any other point of it, right? When you first blow it up, there's not much resistance. But the closer you get just before it pops, it has a lot more resistance. It's the same way that happens with our neurology. It's your neurophysiological equipment is what I'm describing. When you get to that threshold, there's all kinds of things inside of you that want to keep you in that spot because it's familiar, right? But then when you break through it, then it's like, oh my gosh, there's a whole new awareness. It's basically from walking to learning how to ride a bike. I mean, it's a big shift in how you see reality. So level 6, a lot of level 6 is, people that, talking about love and things like that. But the thing that a lot of 6s don't understand is that they are also the most judgmental level, right? We love you as long as it's our way. And this is what's going on right now is if you're not a Democrat, you're the enemy. If you're not a Republican, you're the enemy, right? But what happens after level 6 is you don't understand, you go into a more, it's still individual, but it's more for a greater cause. Now you understand how to create things for yourself that will benefit global, right? So Elon Musk is a great example of a 7. So 7 is what they call the integral level. It's where kind of everything comes together and you really start understanding how important each level is. But as you move through the levels, what determines where you stay is stress. Stress will put you back. You will go back to the level that you last completed when you're in stress. So and I usually spend about 6 hours really explaining what I just explained. So, but that's the gist of it.
Thank you very much. And I have another question, actually. When I was listening to you, when you were on level 3, I would like to ask about so-called alpha power. Is this the level 3? How do you think?
Alpha power?
Mm-hmm.
It depends what you mean by that, because for me, let's take astrology, for example. Astrology, astrological signs. Okay, there's 12 astrological signs, but there is an unhealthy part of that sign and there's a healthy side of that sign. It's just like the Enneagram. There's 9 types of the Enneagram. There's the healthy side of an Enneagram. There's the unhealthy side of an Enneagram. So when you say alpha, there's healthy alpha and there's unhealthy alpha. And then you could take that alpha and put it in, I think important for a alpha, and this has been a big part of my journey, is getting in touch with the alpha, but the animus and the anima is what Carl Jung talked about, right? Is having the understanding of feminine. And I think an evolved alpha male, an evolved one, really has a great understanding and relationship with their feminine aspect as well. I don't know if that answers your question, but that would be because an alpha out of control is dangerous, but an evolved one is powerful. And there's a difference, and probably the best way to explain that would be the difference between power and force. Force is trying to make something happen. Power is understanding and having the awareness of how to move through it. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but it makes sense to me. Because it's funny you ask that, because it's something that this is where I'm currently at, is just really, really understanding more about masculine and feminine. And I don't know, because you have alpha and you have omega, right? And to me, they're the difference between alpha or masculine and feminine. Feminine is incredibly powerful, but it's just different. It's just different, right? Just like alpha is incredibly powerful, it's just different. It's understanding the complementary energies of each other.
Of each other, of complementary energies we have inside everybody.
Right. Yeah, and if you have, it's about balance. So, and this is one of the things that media really is good at, is diagnosing things, right? And what that taps into is people wanting to feel like they belong. So if I belong to a diagnosis, I have meaning, right? I have ADHD, I have PTSD, I have whatever it is, it doesn't matter. I'm an Aries, I'm whatever that is. And what happens is that label has now become a container, right? Yeah. I have to stay within this container because this is my label, right? But the problem is when you created a threshold, right? You created a paradigm with that, and it's being able to live in essence rather than labels. And that's the media wants to label things and put people in boxes, right? I mean, you look at 65% of our advertisement is pharmaceutical advertisements. What every single pharmaceutical, what is involved in that advertisement is a diagnosis, right? You look at the DSM, which is the book they use for diagnosis. There's actually a diagnosis for diagnosis in that book, right? But it's tapping into what is one of our human drivers is we want to feel significant. Well, if I have a label, I'm significant. Right. But it's being able to move beyond that. It's being able to live, move beyond. And it's how our brain processes stuff. Our brain likes to delete, distort, and generalize information so it makes sense to it as fast as possible. But it's learning to live in essence rather than just labeling something and disregarding.
It's interesting. And
Mhm.
again, while I was listening to you, you said about the levels of reconciliation. Why we need this reconciliation levels?
Well, okay, so it's another great question. There's a video out there that's called Everything is Spiritual. It's by Rob Bell, okay?
Yeah.
And Rob Bell, I don't know this for fact, but based on what he demonstrates in this video, talks about in this video, is the lines, again, with Ken Wilber. And it's really understanding the evolution of the process of evolution. So reconciliation is I think, first of all, to really understand that reconciliation is recognizing that we all belong, okay? That we all play a part in this thing called humanity, whatever you want to call that. And, you know, if you start out how we evolved, is, first of all, we started out as a particle, okay? Then that particle moved to an atom. Then that atom evolved into a molecule. That molecule moved into a cell. The cell moved into an organism, okay,
Yeah.
which is who we are, right?
Yes.
But if you go backwards, okay, at the molecule level, there is not a cell. At the molecule level, or at the atom level, there's no molecule, right? So
Right.
what had to happen for each level of evolution was that they had to unite. So all the atoms had to come together and unite in order to create a molecule. All the different types of molecules had to come together to create a cell.
Huh,
All the
it's
different
interesting.
cells had to unite to create an organism, right? We as humanity, as organisms, have to come together to raise ourselves to the next level, right? So that's the reconciliation, is understanding that I am in you and you are in me. And people understanding that what I see out here isn't reality. It's a reflection of who I am.
Mm.
Right? And the more we become aware of that, the more responsibility we can take for it, the more awareness we have, the more we recognize that I am a cause at whatever I feel out here, right? And understanding that how I see people, we can literally change people by how we see them, right? If I looked at the two of you and thought that you were the enemy, I would project a certain feeling out of that, and you guys would the two of you would respond to that, right? But if I look at both of you as just amazing, incredible humans that you are, right, I'm going to project a different energy, which is going to affect how you respond to me. Right? So it's the reconciliation is understanding that we are all really one, with different fingerprints within that one. That's how I would explain that. You know, and that we've been conditioned to conform. We've been conditioned to conform. We got to fit in this model. Don't step outside the model, because if you step out the model, you're going to be humiliated, you're going to be ridiculed, blah, blah, blah. But that's what society wants you to do in order to make sense for itself. A lot of the things that, you know, and the more I just go with what was coming to my mind. The more I learn, the less I know. The more I learn, the less I know. And it's just like, oh my God, it just keeps opening up whole new worlds.
That's interesting. What you told basically is coming back to unconditional love and acceptance of everybody without judgment. Is it the 7th level?
Yeah. That would have gone through 6. That and going into 7 is seeing, and what happens. So it'd be like, and it's understanding this. So if you have somebody, I guess the most simplistic way that I explain this is somebody that is insecure, and you have somebody that is confident, loves themselves, okay with themselves, kind of thing. That insecure person is going to think that confident person is arrogant. Mm-hmm. Right? Because this is all of the makeup they have to project out of to make sense of their reality. So here's somebody that's, you know, loves themselves, confident, feels good about who they are, blah, 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 understands they're human, they're going to make mistakes, blah, blah, blah. This person is going to have to make sense of their reality. Therefore, they're going to judge this person as arrogant. Okay? Excuse me. But once they become aware of the different levels, now they have something reflecting back that's a little bit different. right? Then like NLP is, one of the things that I study a lot is with NLP. To put that simplistic, the most simple explanation is it's an attitude and a methodology that leaves behind a trail of techniques. Okay, the attitude is curiosity. The methodology is studying excellence. So it's finding somebody that is excellent in something and modeling what they do. What is their values? What is their practices? What is their routines? And knowing that it helps them. And I'm here to tell you, I have every single day, I've got to look at this and going, what is going on? And how come I'm seeing this like this? And what else can this mean? And, so it's this constant dance of understanding that if I'm having certain things animated inside of me because of what I perceive out here, that is telling me there's something inside of me that needs to be confronted. Mm-hmm. Right. And rather than running from it, I go, this is where I've got to push in. This is where I've got to really go, what is this about? What's going on? What else can this mean? Things like that. So.
Yes, I have a lot of questions. It's so exciting.
Just briefly for our listeners, could you tell us what NLP stands for?
Oh, sure. It's neuro-linguistic programming. Neuro-linguistic programming. And it started back in the 70s. And what it was is it took 3 disciplines and brought it together. So the 3 disciplines were Gestalt therapy by Fritz Perl, linguistics by Virginia Satir, and then hypnosis, which was by Milton Erickson. And it kind of synthesized all 3 of them.
Thank you very much.
Neuro-linguistic programming.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And again, I was listening about these levels, and for me, it sounds like to be on the next level, you have to make this leap in the consciousness, in the level of your consciousness. Mm-hmm. And from what I have heard from you, as I understood, there is an emotion, leading emotion in the particular level of consciousness in which a person kind of stuck in. Is it true? Does it make sense what I'm trying to?
Absolutely. Because how does Carl Jung say it? What you can't be with will run your life. Okay. So what that means, and this is what it means right now. So it means it could change tomorrow. But what it means for me is that if I'm not willing to look at what is being animated inside of me, that is what's going to run my life. Right. So if I have a fear of driving, okay, and everybody's free of this, by the way, but if I have a fear of driving, just think about how much that's going to run my life.
Yeah.
Driving is a very important part of life, especially in the United States. Now, in New York, it's a little bit different, right, because of just how congested it is and everything. You take taxis and things like that. But if, say I can't be with the color blue because I made some decision that blue is bad because I had an experience as a child. If I'm not willing to press into that and find out what is it that holds this meaning that I gave to blue, then it's going to run my life. Okay. So I've had clients where I had one client that was, this poor guy, I love him. He's a great guy, ended up being great friends, but he had made pretty decent money. I mean, he was making, at one point he made over $600,000, took home over $600,000. Yeah. And when I met him, he was living in the basement broke of a house. And he had done this a number of times. Well, after doing some digging, and what I do is much different than what therapists do. And therapy was a very important part of my journey as well. So it's not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It was a very important part of it. But there's only so far it can take you, right? Just because of the parameters that they have to stay within. I mean, there's so many things that they're just choked out of what they can really, how they can help people. But again, it's a part of the journey, right? So what I do with people is I really want to find out how they think. Not so much focus on what's happened or the meaning they attach to what happened or anything like that. I want to find out, how do they think? This is the result that they want. What is stopping them from having that result? Okay. This guy wanted to make a lot of money and he wanted to do it consistently, right? This is And it's just understanding some of the metrics is like 85% of lottery winners file bankruptcy within 3 years. There's a reason, right? Is because it is so uncomfortable to have all this money that they want to go back to familiar. So they get rid of it. This guy, after doing some digging, found out of some of the decisions he made as a child about money. Okay. And one of the decisions he made about money was that money was more important than him. Okay, because his dad worked all the time, and his dad wanted to provide for him and do well for him and provide a good, a living for his family. But what he made the decision, he wanted a dad to play baseball with him. He wanted a dad to spend time with him, right? So he said, money is more important to me because that's what my dad's doing all the time. So do you think that affected his ability to keep money in his life? Why would he want to keep something in his life that he had made the decision that money was more important than him, right? So it's finding that one limitation and pulling that filter out of the way, and then it just opens up lots of possibilities.
And I have read that you are certified in timeline therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Why this kind of therapy? Could you please explain what?
Sure. So with NLP, Gestalt therapy is what one of the disciplines that they specialized in. Timeline therapy is taking Gestalt therapy to a different level. Okay, so our mind has to organize time in order for it to do it effectively, right? If it didn't organize time, it would have to spend a lot of energy and effort trying to find something. So there were memories that you had when you were 15. There were memories that you had when you were 10. There were memories that you had when you were 5. And it's tapping into how your unconscious organizes time, right? Mm-hmm. And why this is important is because with Gestalt therapy, what Gestalt therapy is basically, if you think of a strand of pearls, okay? You have an experience in your life when you took on a certain belief, whatever that belief was, okay? Money's more important than me. We'll just use that one, for example, right? You took on this belief. Now, if you look at the pearl as the experience, every single experience you have from that point forward is filtered through that experience, okay? So now you have another bead, and then you have another bead, and then you have another bead, right? Well, over time, over years, decades, whatever, you have a very long strand of pearls. All of these pearls represent the experience. The Gestalt is what is the string that holds them all together, okay? So once we find out where the originating event happened, right? Where was it? And I've been blown away with how amazing people are. I mean, it's some of the stuff that is like, wow, that's pretty incredible. So once you find out where the originating event took place, you go back and change the perception of that. So think about having childhood logic, okay? Children take everything personal. Our unconscious takes everything personal, right? It thinks it's all about it, right? So here's a child when, again, he took it personal that his dad was always going out making money. He didn't understand that his dad was doing what he believed to be right for the family, right? So he makes this decision, and everything is built off of that decision. Well, we went back, we found out that, his dad was doing what his dad thought he was supposed to do. He forgives him, and changes and gets the learnings from that. Now that Gestalt releases.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, to me, these pearls, if you will, are anchors. They keep us stuck in the past, right? And when we try to move forward, it's like a parachute. The harder we try to move forward, if we have this parachute that opens up, the harder we pull, the more that parachute opens, right? And it keeps us from moving forward. So it's finding out what was the decision that originated that is causing us to stay with our parachute on, with our anchor, however you want to call it. But then once we change that, I mean, it just, boom, they accelerate radically quick. So, yeah.
That's interesting. And can you please maybe give some kind of hint, so to speak, how you can change your limiting belief very quickly by yourself? Is there a possibility, or you need a help of a professional for that?
Well, for me, For me, okay, so I've read a few books. I've gone through, I have been just obsessed with potential for decades, right? And, I'm one of those kind of people that will read a whole book just to get one nugget. I mean, I'm just kind of weird that way. But to answer your question, first of all, to understand our life is perfectly designed to get the results it's getting. It just is. We're programmed, right? And the way I explain it to people is if, we're all familiar with computers. Most people, if you grew up with computers like I did back in the 80s and things like that, you really understood, programming a little bit, and it was all DOS before Windows came along and things like that. Yeah. So you understand that there is an operating system, right, which is a computer itself, which the language is binary. It's ones and zeros, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they're supposed to fall in an optimized, effective sequence. If that sequence is off, it doesn't matter what software I install on top of it. I want the best relationship. I want the best career. I want to be the most spiritual person. Whatever program I install on top of that, if the operating system is off, that software is not going to operate to its fullest potential, right?
Right, absolutely.
So it's just understanding that the decision. So the first thing is do an inventory. Okay. I have to inventory the binary language of what's going on to find out where is that limiting belief. We can't change something that we're not aware of.
Yes.
Right? So we've got to look at the behavior is the adaptive. Behavior is an adaptation, meaning all of the software that goes on, all the programming that's going on here, which is a digital aspect, creates the analog aspect of it, which is the behavior. Okay. Behavior is unconscious. We don't really think about how to behave. So if the behavior isn't aligned with the result that we want, we have to reverse engineer it and saying, what is this about? So understanding that, then we can start asking, instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Because we're going to get the answer to that.
Yes.
It's going to confirm why we're stuck in that position, right? But if we change, what am I supposed to be learning from this? That changes, you get different answers. Mm-hmm. What else can this mean? Right? So, and the unfortunate thing is that people, say someone's hurt, they're in a relationship, okay? They have this meaning about what marriage is, okay? And something happens and just absolutely blows that paradigm out of the water, and they're like, whoa, now what do I do? It's a whole new identity, right? But then what they do is they don't want to experience that pain ever again. So now they change the meaning of marriage, right? And all marriages are bad because they need to make sense of their pain, right? But if they turn around and go, this pain is holding me back. Again, what we can't be with runs our life, right? So it's looking at, first of all, taking the learnings out of it, right? If we look back far enough in any aspect of our lives, we will see that we made a decision somewhere that put us in that position of pain. Mm-hmm. We look at it far enough back, right?
Right.
And if we take, so the first thing I would encourage your listeners to is, first of all, take responsibility for your life. Every single aspect of it. Your finances are where they're at because of decisions you've made. Period. I mean, it's not, so if you want to make more income, then figure out what's going on with your money programming. Okay, there's lots of books out there. And with coaching, you asked the question about coaching. For me, why coaching is so important. You read a book, it's a one-way conversation, right? And I only have a certain level of understanding and awareness within myself. If I hire a coach, that coach is going to be able to see things about me that I can't see.
Right. Blind spots.
And we could go on a whole rant about how I feel about coaching. just because there's coaches out there that it's like another friend of mine says, they're like monkeys with nail guns. I mean, and it doesn't have anything to do with their intention or them having a good heart or anything like that. But these are people's lives. Okay. And health. Right. And so it's important when you choose a coach to understand that the coach has gone through it. Right? I didn't sign up to be a coach. My goal in life was not to be a coach. The reason I became a coach is I figured out that there was some things that I did for my own journey that actually could help other people. But it was my journey that I went through on my own to get to learn to have this relationship with spirituality and freedom and, you know, the things that are important to me, that I realized that there were some things that I could do to educate and help other people. That's why I became a coach. It wasn't, oh, I'm going to be a coach, this is kind of cool. Actually, that was probably the last thing on my mind. So, but to get people to see, pay attention to the feedback, okay? Are there people that are saying, is there a common denominator in your life? You know, if you've had multiple relationships, who's the common denominator in that relationship? Obviously we are, right? So it's looking in the mirror and facing what you see.
Yes.
Right? One of the things I have my clients do, and I'm just going to probably make some people very uncomfortable, but that's okay, I have them stand in front of a mirror naked, nude, and say, what is the conversation you're having with yourself right now?
Huh.
And that's real. I mean, it's getting in touch with the conversation that you're having inside of your head. And journaling is another important component of it, because what I do with basically when I explain it to people is I say, this is your truest potential self. And I'm holding up a pen for the people that are just listening. and what we do is we take this pen, when it is our fullest potential, and we choke it. We just hold it like this. And we just I am not going to let anything in there and hurt that. Okay. But what we got to do is start asking questions that unravel choking this pen to pull this fullest potential out. Because look at children. Children are curious. Children don't judge. Children aren't prejudiced. Children don't have they're conditioned to all this stuff, right? Yeah. So I'll leave with so changing the questions. You change the questions, it's going to change what you focus on. Okay.
The answers, yes, too. Mm-hmm.
So 3 questions I have people ask themselves. Okay, and I would encourage your listeners to do this.
Yes.
Because the more intimate we can be with ourselves, the more we can teach somebody to be intimate with us. Love is not this thing that just happens, right? It's a strategy. And the more I can learn to love myself, then I can teach somebody else to love me the way I need to be loved. I know what's important to me, right? Yes. So 3 questions I ask people, and I have them to write these 3 things down on the left side into rows, and then I'm going to have them put 2 columns. The 2 columns are truth or lie. They put lie first, and then right next to that put truth. And then in the row is, how do I see myself? What is the lie? And what is the truth about me? Okay?
I have so many questions. I'm trying to understand which one to ask.
Right. But with this, because these are the 3 things that really have a huge investment with how we see ourselves, right? Because we will only rise to how much we see ourselves. That's just it. I mean, so the first one we're going to ask ourselves is, how do I see myself? What is the lie? What is the truth?
Yes.
How do I see God? What is the lie? What is the truth? Okay. And then what is money? What do I have lies about money? And what is the truth about money? Right? Because all of these decisions that we have affect our lives radically. How do I see myself is going to have a lot to do with how far I will go in my life. If I know that I'm value and that I am unique, but yet I'm part of one, and that this conversation right now, because this is the first time I've ever actually, we've communicated a little bit back and forth, but because this is the first time I've sat down with you and your husband, and vice versa for the 2 of you with me, we have created something new. You have the questions you're asking me. This is where I'm at this moment in my life. And out of that, we've created something new. Yeah. Right? And understanding every single person we meet, we get introduced to a new part of ourselves. Yeah. And the more we get in touch with that, that's living. That is living of being able to let certain parts of us die to experience, to allow new things to be born within us. That's living. That's living. We weren't born to slowly die. Right? We were born to live and thrive and grow. So I hope that answered your question. It was kind of a long way around. But
I'm sitting listening to you, and it's amazing. First of all, I see that it's definitely your passion, but even more. I feel like it's almost like enlightenment or some experience which just came to you. Because for me, what I have heard, it's not only knowledge you got from the different kinds of certifications, but it's much greater knowledge. So my next question is, what was the key decision at what point in your life when you decided to proceed to go to follow this path?
When my values changed, and it happened in a moment. And it happened in 1985 when I woke up in a hospital. Didn't know I was in a hospital. And I woke up, I gained, before I opened my eyes, I had a wave of pain shoot through my body that I had never experienced in my life. And I was like, what in the world is going on? I slowly opened my eyes, and this nurse is standing over me. And she said, do you know where you're at? And I kind of looked around and said, I'm in a hospital. And then she says, do you recognize these people? And it was my family in that room. And I said, yeah. And she goes, do you know what happened? And I said, no, what happened? I was in a near fatal car accident. And it took a few days for me to kind of get my bearings back. Actually, it took decades to get my bearings back, but in the sense of what really happened. But found out that I had fractured my neck and I had compound fractured my right femur in 2 places. But that wasn't the part that woke me up. It was that my sister was in the hospital across the street fighting for her life. And that's what got my attention. And today my sister's healthy. She's good. I just talked to her yesterday. Yeah. But she's got brain, she had severe brain damage. She's lost part of her eyesight, one of her eyes today. But that's what it took for me to wake up and recognizing that my behavior was affecting somebody else. And so, not only somebody else, but someone I loved. I was her big brother. I was supposed to protect her, not kill her. And it was that moment that started it. It took a lot. I mean, that happened when I was 19 years old. And at that point in my life, I didn't want to live to be past 25. I played things like Russian roulette and drove drunk, hammered all the time. I had people say that you're going to kill somebody. And it's like, well, it's their time to go. It's their time to go. That's just how I felt. But it took having my sister in that car for me to really wake up, to begin to wake up. And then about 4.5 years after that, I got my heart broke. Got in a relationship, got my heart broke, and I made a decision. And that was a great question that you'd asked. What was the decision I made? The decision that I made that was really, because I started changing my life for my sister to prove that I'm sorry, right? That I didn't want to do this. And it was what needed to happen. It wasn't the I don't like using the word the right way, because that is a certain level of understanding, but it was all part of the journey.
Yes.
I went to college. I got to turn my life around and just prove that I'm sorry for what I did to my sister, because it affected a lot of people, obviously. But when I got my heart broke, there was just something that shifted inside of me. And at this point I had a little experience, because I went into treatment. I got a DUI. I went into treatment, spent 28 days in treatment, and just started cracking this thing called introspective and looking at, getting in touch with how much I hated myself.
Huh.
And then when my heart was broke, I said, I just made the decision. I want a better quality of life. I don't want to do this anymore. Because at that point, pretty much anything that meant anything to me in my life, I had destroyed it. So it really made me get honest. And then shortly after that, I took on, I got into 12 steps, and there was a phrase that just radically changed my life. And it was, live a life that demands rigorous honesty. Because I think that, and I almost answered that way when you said, what is your creative talent, or different, whatever it was that how you asked that, was being honest, rigorously honest with yourself is a skill. It's not something that just happens, right? And
Yes.
the more we are separated from our inner self, the more our outer self is pulled away from our inner self, the more we're going to suffer, right?
Yes.
So we've really got to ask ourselves, who am I? What is it that I really want? Why am I sacrificing myself? Why am I compromising who I am? Why am I allowing other people's opinions to rule my life? Why am I allowing someone else that had this experience to happen? Why am I giving all this power to keep me held back? Right? So that was back in 90 when I made that decision. And since then, I've just become, done everything I can to find out this amazing thing called consciousness and enlightenment, and just really, really, really taken it as far as I can with what I have, and I've worked with some of the best coaches out there, and it's a question that I was introduced to about 10 years ago really helped me understand how important this is. What we invest in runs our life. What we invest in runs our life, right? And just to give you a simple example, if you're watching a football game, I'm not a big football fan. I'm a more of a race car kind of guy. But if I'm at the Super Bowl and I put $100 down on a team, it changes that game. It changes the game. Right now, because I put an investment in that. Now that's my team. Now they got to win, right? What we invest in changes our lives, right? So it's being very discerning about what are we investing in, because whoever's investing the most into our mind is the one that's going to be running our lives. Hitler was very good at investing into people's lives. Ended up almost taking the world over, right? I mean, people allowed him to invest into their minds, right? And so with that said, I take it very serious. Our environment is our container. This is our container of what we can access, and then this is our environment that shapes the shell, right? So it's just been a journey of me making decisions, and decisions are basically what's important to us, right? That's what determines what decisions we make. I wanted a better quality of life. I made that decision. I made that decision almost 30 years ago. So it's the power of decision. The power of decision can change your life radically.
That's cool. That's interesting.
Yeah.
You said that you woke up when you changed your values. Could you share with us and our listeners, what are your values nowadays?
Okay, so that's a great question. In the sense that it's understanding the importance of value. First of all, we got to really understand that. And everybody's heard know your why, right? But there's a process to really find out what that means, right? Because the reason they ask you know your why is, what do you value? Because your values, what you value at a deep level, is what drives you, right? But we have values in 6 areas of our lives. We have career, we have personal development, we have spirituality, we have personal health, we have family, and we have friends. All of those have their own values, right? So to answer your question, right, whatever do you want to talk about, right? But for me, my top value, probably that would encompass all of them, is it would probably be awareness.
And what does this mean for you?
Awareness is, so for me, mastery. When I teach people, is mastery is a result of 4 things. It's having the awareness. That awareness gives you ability to anticipate, and then being able to anticipate gives you the ability to adapt, and out of that adaptation will allow you how to act. So it's the 4 A's. It's awareness, anticipate, adapt, and act. Okay. So, but awareness gives you that ability, right? It's the more aware you are, the higher you evolve into the levels, right, that we talked about. And if I'm not aware that feminine is different than me, I'm in trouble, right? Because the reason relationships don't work, and you can talk about husband and wife, you can talk about partnerships, you can talk about siblings, you can talk about parents and children, relationships, period, all fall underneath this. The reason relationships don't work is not because of sex and money. We'll just put that within the context of marriage. It's because of communication. And what people don't fight, it's not people that fight and disagree, it's levels of understanding that fight. Right? And this is one of the biggest conflicts between parents and children, is that children are taught at a higher level than the parents were, because we've evolved for 30 years or whatever. When the child starts being educated, school's much different now than when I went to school. It just is. There's a lot more things going on. I mean, this changed the game. The internet changed the game. And so they have a lot more access to things that I graduated sixth in my class. Okay. There were only 6 in my class, but I graduated sixth, right? I was in a pretty small school, right? But today children have massive, massive stuff to work into. So that's why, to me, it's important to have awareness, because it's our blind spots is our vulnerabilities. And I don't have an issue with being vulnerable, but if my ego will tell me that, well, it's okay to think this way, it's okay it's okay to judge this, it's blah, 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 blah. But if I don't have the awareness of, wait a minute, there's probably more to this than what I'm seeing, then that gives me the ability to change that. So my highest value is the awareness, probably. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Awareness and mastery. That's pretty cool, I would say.
Is awareness and consciousness the same thing? For you.
It could be. Sure, they could be. But I think I wouldn't say they're the same thing entirely, because I believe that having different levels of awareness affects our levels of consciousness. And when I say levels of consciousness, another one of my mentors is David Hawkins. I mean, the guy actually learned how to calibrate. You're shaking your head if you're familiar with him.
Oh, yes.
Calibrate consciousness was pretty amazing what he actually did.
Yes.
But again, that goes into like spiral dynamics. It goes into Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It goes into the Enneagram. I mean, there's lots of different things. But I think the awareness gives us the ability to raise our consciousness.
Okay.
But they interchange with each other. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Would you share with us and our listeners, please, what is your mission and how you change and test the old paradigm?
Wow, these are great questions. My mission, I think it's important that I explain what happened first, how I came to that mission. I was listening to a speaker, I think it was Brian Tracy, and he said, if I broke into your house and I woke you up at 3 a.m. and your life depended on it for you to answer this question, if you weren't able to answer the question, your life is over. And I woke you up at 3 a.m. and said, what's your purpose in life? Can you answer that question? Most people can't.
Yeah.
So I got up the next morning
That's
and I figured out what my mission was, right?
Yeah.
And that is to use my passion, my creativity to empower others to live to their fullest potential.
Huh.
That's my mission. And to use my experience, the things that I've gone through, the passion, my creativity, all of that, to teach and empower them so that they can live in their fullest potential. And that's my mission. And what was the other part of the question?
And how do you change and shape the old paradigm?
How do I change and shape the old paradigm? Awareness would be the first part of that, is recognizing, before every time we have, every breakthrough that we have is preceded by signs. Okay. And if we understand what those signs are, then we can understand that we are about to go through a breakthrough. Now, how long that takes, I don't know, right? Sometimes it can take an instant, sometimes it can be weeks, months, years, whatever, right?
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's what determines how fast we accelerate through something is our resistance to it, right? We can, because again, like I was talking about the balloon, right? Is that we start pressing into this threshold, we want to press back. We want to go back to familiar, right? That's just, our brain is designed to protect us, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so our brain is designed to not take risks. It's not to challenge things and things like, but we are made to challenge too. But So, and understanding that is every breakthrough is preceded by a number of things, not just a few. One is boredom, one is anger, one is frustration, one is fear, one is uncertainty, one is all. And see, when you understand that all frustration is that our neurology is searching for a solution. That's all that's going on. That's why we feel the feeling of uncomfortable or frustration is like, I don't know how to figure this out. But if we have the awareness, then we go, okay, cool. I know what's going on now. That's cool. And it's amazing what happens when we sleep on something. It really is. It's really amazing when we sleep on something and we come up next day, it's like, wow, this is totally different shit. So knowing that a threshold is being hit, I start feeling those feelings. There's uncomfortableness, there's fear, there's frustration, there's boredom, there's all these different kinds of things. And I would just encourage your listeners too, because behavior is an adaptation. It just is, okay? So what it does is your unconscious produces this thing thinking, well, this is the best behavior to have, right?
Right.
Is to look at how is the unwanted behavior serving you? A lot of people will say, well, it's not serving me. Yes, it is. You wouldn't do it if it didn't serve you.
Yeah, secondary gain.
And right, the secondary gain is understanding that the negativity will continue until we figure out how it serves us, right? So again, the more neutral or objective we can look at inventorying ourselves, the greater we can look at the feedback and utilize it. You know, it's one of the other things that I was taught is looking at your life as if you were a CEO of your company, looking at the P&L, right? You're not going to fudge numbers on that P&L, right? Because you fudging numbers on there is going to affect the bottom line. And to run a business effectively, it wouldn't be a wise strategy to change the numbers of what you want them to be. Same thing with your life. The more honest you can be with yourself. But see, again, doing this, we run into things is if we have guilt, shame, different things like that going on, it's going to affect our ability to be objective, right? So it's important for us to give ourselves permission. Everybody on this, listening to this, and this might sound funny and kind of weird, every single one of you right now in this moment, I give you, not that I'm anybody, but I give you full permission to succeed. There's so many people out there that want permission to succeed. They want somebody to say, go tear it up. Go see what you can do, right? But the people that are trying to make sense of their own insecurities are doing everything they can to hold them back, right? And I read this book, Permission to Succeed by Noah St. John. It was amazing what that book did for me, is because we have these paradigms of what we believe our conditioning wants us to do, right? Yeah. And I had to really look at, I was becoming somebody that I had made the decision that my parents didn't like. How my parents talked about their employers, how my parents talked about the wealthy, how my parents talked about intelligent people, how my parents talked about all these people. I made decisions about that of going, and then I recognized, oh my gosh, that's who I'm becoming. So now I've got to approach the thing of, am I willing to let go of how my parents seen things? And it might mean it probably is going to mean that relationship's going to change.
Yes.
Right? So again, it's being willing to let things die in order for other things to be born. And I'm not by any means implying anything on that other than we've got to look at what we invest in. Am I investing into this belief that's keeping me stuck? Or am I going to invest in anything is possible? Yeah. Anything is possible.
Yeah, I agree with you. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm sitting and wondering here, whom do you become if you live the life of awareness and mastery?
Repeat that, please.
Whom do you become when you live life of awareness and mastery?
Who do I become?
Who are you?
Wow, that is I don't even want to say great question, because that doesn't even really, that's an amazing question. Who do I become? My dad always told me, when you borrow something, always return it better than what you got it. So I was given this thing called life. Yeah. And who do I become is a model of potentiality. I think that would be the way I would answer that, is I want my life to represent that even though you have been horrifically hurt, even though somebody has been conditioned to believe whatever, that it's possible to let that go and to step into your truest self. That's what, so to answer it succinctly, who do I become? I would say self with a capital S.
That's amazing. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great question. Wow, it's a great question. It goes along with what I've been pondering. I heard this question a couple days ago, and it said, if you had 3 days to live, what would you do in order for your life to feel complete?
What's the answer?
I haven't come up with it yet. I haven't come up with it yet, but it's and that's why one of my mantras that I came up with for myself is live like your life depends on it, because it does. And it's looking at, I take my life serious, but when I take my life serious, I also understand it's very important to laugh. I also understand it's very important to be goofy and to do crazy things. But to I think is recognizing that one of my challenges have been with my spirituality is. And when I say challenge, it's a great thing. I mean, I've had many desert experiences where I walked out on the desert in this transformational period. And, this wrestling with this whole idea that God is love. And that if God is love, then why did all this happen? Kind of stuff. Whatever it is, how's that happen? And today I understand that to be that is because there's this dance that it's the evolution of things, right? If we're learning to dance with a partner, we're going to get our toes stepped on, right? There's a pain, there's this process of fumbling and being clumsy, and out of it comes this incredible expression of whatever it is that you invest into, right? So for my life to be complete, and I used to have 3 wishes. I used to ask people this question. It's been a while since I've done this. I asked, what is your 3 wishes, right? Because you can find out a lot about somebody asking them that question.
Yes.
My 3 wishes were that everybody would know that they were significant and valued, world peace, and potentiality. Those were my 3 wishes, right? So, to have the evidence of what that means so that I know that that my life was complete. I don't know. I don't know what I haven't come up with I just want people to know that they are amazing and that God loves them beyond anything they can comprehend. And I'm not talking about the religious God. I'm talking about the omnipotent God. I'm talking about, and I think for me, there's all religions talk about, gods, whatever, created us in their image, right?
Yeah.
The disconnect came when we created God in our image.
Yeah.
And we got to work on that, right? And that's just humans. We just do it. We got our little ego that likes to get in the way. And so to have people, to encourage people to question what they believe is real, I think would be really helping people, would be part of what I would feel my life was complete.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you very much. And how it feels like to be you when you feel this presence of, I would say, higher force guiding you. How it feels like to be you.
Words can't describe it. I mean, I know that's kind of a cheesy answer, but it's really, and I would encourage everybody to take anything literal is a very limited level of understanding.
Yeah.
Right. And that's just how we've been programmed. Right. But it's, I mean, you feel it. It's that flow. It's that essence. It's I don't have hair on my head, but it's like everything inside of me is just vibrating. I mean, it's incredible. And just in this conversation right now, there's been many times where I have felt that of just, this is click. I just feel it. It's
Yeah.
and that's, I share with people too, is there are certain things that are reserved for the discipline. And I don't mean that arrogantly, but someone that's going to exercise every day, they're going to be aware of things that somebody that doesn't. Someone that meditates every day, there's going to be things that they're aware of that other people aren't aware of, right? Yeah. So there's disciplines and habits that allow you to see things that other people don't see. And life isn't changed. It can be in a moment, but it's the incremental micro decisions and choices we make every single day that compound over time. But all of those affect how often I experienced what you asked, right? Like Ken Wilber, he talked about, he had 11 days where it was utopia. I mean, he said, I've never experienced, I mean, he checked out for 11 days. But this guy has been hooked up to EKG machines and be able to shut his brainwaves down. That takes discipline to learn how to do that. But because he did that, he developed that discipline, he was able to experience utopia for 11 days. So that's what I strive to, I want give me some of that.
That's amazing. Huh. Is there something we didn't ask you about, but you would like to talk about?
Yeah, real briefly. And that's forgiveness.
Forgiveness.
I'd like to talk about forgiveness a little bit. Because, and when I was introduced to this concept, it challenged me. And I mean, when I say challenge me, it was just like, I felt that resistance come up of just going, what in the heck does this mean, right?
Yeah.
And that, what the concept was, all behavior has a positive intention. All behavior. So I'm kind of one of those people, well, let's just take it to the extreme. Let's just find out, let's play that out and see what that looks like. So I was molested as a child many times by neighborhood kids. And I'm like, okay, let me try to make sense of this. What is probably the most horrific thing that somebody could do that would challenge most people about forgiveness? We'll talk about a pedophile, okay? And for me, forgiveness is about understanding. It's about having the awareness, right, that gives us the understanding, and it's us embracing our own humanity, really, really embracing our own humanity. But so when I was a jewelry designer for a couple decades, and I was at a client, and she ran a television station, and I was waiting in the waiting room, and Oprah was on, and the episode was a pedophile was being reunited with his stepdaughter, who he victimized in order for him to go to prison. Okay, first time they've talked since he was incarcerated.
Huh.
Now she's a young woman. She's not a little girl anymore. She's a young woman. Yeah. And they're talking, and of course this is my own interpretation of it, so don't take it literal, people. Okay, I would just encourage you to challenge yourself through this. So the guy comes out, sits down in front of the young woman now, and she just starts crying, just releasing, and she just asked him, why did you do this to me? I loved you, I honored you, you were the man, you were the guy that I trusted. You were everything to me. I mean, you replaced my dad. Why would you do why would you do this to me? And he says, that's why. Because I knew you loved me, because I knew you trusted me, because I knew that you worshiped me, but I didn't understand that I perverted that need. I knew you wouldn't reject me, right? So what he did was wrong. I mean, there's no question about that. He perverted an unmet emotion inside of him, and perverted it to think that this is how he was going to fulfill meeting that need, okay? But understanding it from that standpoint, it helps you understand it was a positive intention for him. Just because a behavior has a positive intention for me does not mean that it has a positive outcome, right? If I feel somebody's going to threaten me, I'm going to shut them down. Or back in my old day, I would have shut them down, right? It would have not been a positive outcome for them, but it had been a positive intention for me. So I say that is we got to forgive ourselves, right? And what I did to my sister, I got a scar down the back of my neck that's about that long, okay? And when I went bald, it was horrific. I mean, I was contemplating suicide. I got to the edge of that identity of like, holy crap. I mean, but I didn't realize why until years later, what was really going on. My long hair allowed me to cover my shame, which was my scar. Because people come up the back of me and say, what happened to you? You know, they see this big scar. What happened to you? Well, that scar is a result of what I did to my sister. Okay. That's the story I have attached to that scar. So it's been a long journey for me. It took probably 15 years for me to really let go of that. Is that we have to learn. Maya Angelou said something, and I'm going to butcher it, but paraphrasing it, basically she said, we need to forgive ourselves for what we needed to learn in the evolving process. That car accident was a crucial part of my evolution to get me to where I'm at today. I have to let it go because me hanging on to that prevents me from where I really want to go, which is the capital S, right? In self. And as long as and this is how shame works. Shame is insidious. It'll attach to that. And that's where darkness, you know, and so, and the other part of it is understanding, measuring darkness and light. Okay. And this is a real simple thing that one of my coaches introduced me to, was light energy and dark energy are polarities, right? Obviously, right? Yeah. Light always prevails darkness. Okay. You can't turn on a dark beam in a light room. You just can't. So darkness always prevails light. But looking at it metaphorically of how that works is light moves clockwise. When we feel things of light, we're energized. We feel enlightened. We feel awake. When we feel love and peace and joy and compassion and all these, our body, what it releases, serotonin, is compassion. Our body is designed to move more towards the light, right? But darkness moves counterclockwise. Okay, so it's drawing, it's a vortex, right? It pulls from us shame, sadness, sorrow, guilt, limitations. All of these things move in a counterclockwise direction. So when we feel this way, we can ask ourselves, what am I feeding? What is going on here, right? And it's been said, forgive or ye will not be forgiven. We all have heard that. What that means is we have to receive forgiveness before we can extend it. We have to be able to forgive ourselves before we can extend it.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a huge paradigm shift for a lot of people, is because we can't give something away that we don't have.
Yeah.
Right? So it's really understanding all behavior, and I don't use that word unless it fits. All behavior has a positive intention, and understanding states, right? Sometimes when we're in an unresourceful state, like going to the grocery store when we're hungry, or getting into a relationship because we're needy, or making financial decisions because we're in a desperation, those understanding the states that we're in has a lot to do with our behavior. Right? So again, it's forgiving ourselves for what we had to go through with the process in order for us to evolve and learn what we needed to learn. So everybody, and it's our ego that doesn't want to let us forgive ourselves. That's darkness. That's darkness going in the other way. As long as nothing has any power but the power we give it.
Yeah.
Right? And forgiveness can happen like that. And it's, and the important part of that is understanding that our emotions attract situations into our lives for us to confront what we haven't dealt with yet.
Yes.
Right? And I've just had it a couple of years ago. I attracted a woman into my life that if you would have asked me prior to that, if I had dealt with all the issues I had dealt with my mom, I would have passed a lie detector test. I really would have. Mm-hmm. But having her come into my life, when we make decisions to raise our game, there's going to be situations that come into our life that forge us so that prepare us for that next level, right? And so I had to go through that in order for me to experience what I needed to experience in order for me to be where I'm at now. There's no way I could be where I'm at now had that not happened. Was it fun going through it? Oh, hell no. It was hell. It was literally hell. But going through it, now I trust my ability to, and that's the other part of it, is people, we will not trust ourselves until we forgive ourselves. Right? And who can we really trust if we don't trust ourselves? Because it's our ability to distinguish who we trust and who we can't trust. Right? So it's important for us to forgive ourselves so that we learn to trust ourselves, so that we can have awareness to adapt, anticipate, adapt, and act. Right? So I hope that answered your question.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much for such an amazing conversation. It's a lot of interesting, incredible, I would say, information, and it was our honor to have you once again on our podcast. And I really honor what you do. Thank you for your work, and I felt what you felt a lot of times during our conversation too. So
thank you very much. Lots to think about.
Thank you for having me, and I would encourage your listeners. I mean, go to my fan page, facebook.com/Jeff Faldalen. Buy my book. My book is a lot of stuff I talk about in there. You know, it's this is what's the magic of it. You know, I mean, it's decisions that I made that allow us to meet, and decisions you guys have made that allowed you to be in the position that you're in, and now you're creating this podcast and changing consciousness, and that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. And I love it. And thank you for allowing me to be here and be here with your listeners. It means a lot to me.
Yeah, it's magic.
Yeah, it's magic.